Welcome to the place where singles shine, celebrating life, divine by design. In faith and love, we intertwine. Route 77, where your journey's prime.
Welcome to the Route 77 podcast. Today we're diving into a sensitive but important topic, the discrimination against singles and childless individuals. Recently, comments by J.D. Vance have sparked controversy and highlighted underlying societal attitudes. We'll be discussing how these views impact people, especially from a Christian perspective, and why it's crucial to challenge these stereotypes. Whether you're single, childless, or just interested in a more inclusive society, this episode is for you. Let's get started. Welcome to the Route 77 podcast. I am your host, Natasha, and I am here with Monique.
Hello.
And David.
Hello.
And I'm going to start off by saying I'm not trying to be political in this episode, and it's not my purpose. And two is I understand this article that I'm going to refer to is in the States and not Canada. But I think what I want to talk about is the attitude and the unfortunate attitude that tends to come from, or even people who are more conservative, not in a political sense, but in like a living sense, how they live is more conservative than other people. So anyway, so I was reading through articles because that's what I do for fun. And as some people may know, in the last little while, Joe Biden has stepped back from re-running for president. And so Kamala Harris has come up, and she's now a potential running person for the Democrats down in the States. And one of the first things that she has done is to pull up some past, I think it was 2021, something that the potential running mate for Donald Trump said in around 2021. So again, this is like a cancel culture thing where it's let's see if we can find something in the background to cancel them, to get people to not like them and whatnot. And I don't think that's the best way to go about it. But with all that's happened with it, he hasn't come forward and said, I've changed a lot since then. I don't think this way or not.
Even Jennifer Aniston stepped into this conversation.
Yes, and that's what it was. So it said basically J.D. Vance called the Democrats a bunch of childless cat ladies with miserable lives. And he goes on, he criticized Vice President at the time, Kamala Harris, because she has no biological children. She is a stepmother, but she has no biological children. So that was the thing that he brought up. And also he brings up that Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, all Democratic people, the entire future of the Democrats is controlled by people without children. How does it make any sense? We've turned our country over to people who don't really have a direct stake in it.
I don't know what that's going to do with it.
Yeah. And so what I don't like is that everybody's defending on the Republican side what he said. And they're trying to say he just meant that when you become a parent, you see things differently, magically. And yes, I agree. I don't have children. But I understand that when you have children, that can change things in your priorities and how you realize how things might play out in the future. Yes, it's going to change your life. It's a life-changing moment. I feel differently when my nephew was born. When Simon was born, every child, but he was first of all of my nephews and nieces. But on probably a lesser scale than a parent. But does it really mean that a person who doesn't have children really has no stake in the future, that we can just be all whatever, I have no kids to worry about?
So let me get this straight, because it's hard to follow. So you have a person who is saying that because you don't have children, you do not have a stake in the future of the nation that they live in?
Yes.
Okay.
And he was basically saying that the U.S. is run by a bunch of childless cat ladies who are miserable at their own lives and the choices that they've made. And so they want to make the rest of the country miserable too.
So I'm a little confused.
I'm
Uh-huh.
a lot.
So he must think that the elections were rigged then. Otherwise, the very people voted for these people. So they didn't see a problem with these people. And yet this guy says these things about the presidents, saying that
The vice
since they
president.
don't have children, there's no stake. But yet the majority of the nation itself voted, yes, I want this person to rule. So where's his backing?
Yeah, it's a lot of mudslinging.
Yep.
But it's the unfortunate thing is that so many people are agreeing with him that are on the politically conservative, although I won't say they all do, but it's just sad to see how many people are like backing him up instead of saying, no, that was a bad thing to say, but it doesn't mean that's the way he thinks now, or there's ways of playing it properly.
Does he not give any reasons for his like how does not having children affect the stake in which they have of their own country?
Basically, his response at the moment has been, I've got nothing against cats, Vance says. But apparently, New Orleans is a different thing, whatever. I know the media wants to attack me and wants me to back down. But the simple point that I made is that having children, becoming a father or becoming a mother, I really do think it changes your perspectives in a pretty profound way.
Only in certain things, though.
But how would having children enhance your ability to determine what is right or wrong for the nation? Effectively, that's what I'm saying. Where is he not providing that kind of information? His view on it? Is he not backing his view up?
I'm
In these interviews. It wasn't a debate, so it was more of an interview. So a lot of times they don't have a backup. They just say these things. And then everybody nods their head in agreement.
Yeah. So it seems like to me that it's just a bunch of kids going onto a show and debating something in which they don't have any real backing stance on. As soon as you start questioning at a deeper level, they're probably going to either get confused or back off. Why is this even important enough for us to talk about when it's literally like a 30-minute interview with some guy who says a bunch of things about someone?
He's
and
running for
then-
vice president.
Yeah. And I guess the point is less about the political side and more about the fact that he thinks it's okay to say this type of a thing. And that, unfortunately, a more conservative viewpoint agrees with him. And again, not all conservatives, but I think there is a good, solid amount that agree with what he said.
This guy, J.D. Vance, he is the vice presidential candidate for Donald Trump, who is running for president.
So they're going to go back and try to find something that he's done wrong.
Yeah.
So yeah, I understand that. But again, like he just doubled down on what he said. He didn't like when he goes, I have nothing against cats. But basically, if you're not a parent, then your perspectives change in a profound way your perspectives can't possibly change in a profound way unless you have kids. And which is interesting as a person, I believe he has been in the military and has seen action. So you think that someone who has gone through that would actually understand that there's a lot of things in life that can drastically and profoundly change your point of view.
But I find it interesting that he said, I have nothing against cats, which means that you've got something against women who have no kids?
Or even women who decide that they want to be crazy cat ladies and they're tired of being alone and they like to have pets. Is there something wrong with people wanting pets? And yeah, sometimes they'll say they're my babies, like Zeus my baby. And I'll be like, hey, what are you doing? Mom's over here or something. But I'm not like, I know there are crazy people, but I don't believe he's my child or my cats or my children in the sense if I had a biological human child. But I care for them and I appreciate like what they can offer and just emotional companionship to a certain level. But just because I choose to have 3 cats and a dog, does that make me less of a person who can go to politics or speak for schools? I have nieces and nephews. I care about stuff that happens for them. I care about the future of our country for them. But also, what if I was like the last living person in my family and I was never having children? Does that mean I have less of a say or less of a meaning just because of that?
The marginalization is really ridiculous in that statement.
Yeah. And I think it's going to come back to bite him that he said that, especially the fact that he doubles down on it. He doesn't like retract it or anything when he's.
Yeah, he didn't have a choice. Retracting it will put him in an awkward position. It's like, why would you say something on air and then retract it immediately?
He could do it now because it was 2 years ago.
Yeah, it was like
3 years ago.
2021 or something that he had actually said this. So they are digging it up. But
Yeah.
it's the
Yes,
fact that he
but-
gets brought up with it now and he's just, I still stand by what I said.
If he retracts what he says now, then everyone who supported him immediately does not support him.
But the funny thing is that a lot of his supporters have jumped ship. A lot of women have been offended by this statement. And now Harris has gained, especially female fraternities, which amounts to a lot of women are on her side. And now she is actually ahead of Donald Trump in the polls. So this statement, regardless of whether he is right or not, and I don't think he is, has hurt their candidacy. So for him to just sit back and say, no, I stand by what I say. And as a parent, I think I know what it is that he believes, but it's ridiculous. It's asinine. Can I say that word? He believes that only people with children would understand the effects of education.
And it seems like it means biological because, like I said, Kamala Harris is a stepmother.
She's got stepchildren. Like,
Yeah.
how is that any different?
So it's,
Are you kidding me? That doesn't
Yeah.
make any sense. I'm having a very hard time following anything this guy or what you guys are saying.
and I guess it's partly to do with what he said and the fallout of what's happening, but it's to understand this whole idea of the crazy cat lady. Like you go from marriageable to a spinster to the crazy cat lady. Like there's,
Is hoarding thousands and thousands of cats.
Like,
They
it's
come
like-
in and they clean up and they find the carcasses. And
but it really puts like this negative spin on what it is to be a single woman and a single woman without children. It's like you shrivel up and you become like this weird anomaly. And we use it like, yeah, I might jokingly use it, but I mean it in a totally sarcastic manner, but not in an actual manner. Like when he's saying things like, they're crazy cat ladies who have miserable lives and can't stand the choices that they made, so they want to make everybody else miserable. It's like there's no other choice than to have children. And if you don't, then you're just going to become bitter and shut out the world. Because crazy cat ladies basically are hermits. Like they sit in their house with their million cats and then they come out with like curlers in their hair until the kids.
wearing a pink bathrobe with holes in it, smoking a cigarette, and yelling at the people who cross those. And then they send the welfare in because people can't stand the smell coming from the house. So they clean it out and find not only thousands of different cats in various stages of health concerns, but a whole bunch of dead ones and carcasses and skeletons, which is frightening me. But that is an extreme case.
Yeah.
I do the same thing. I call myself a crazy cat lady. We got 2 cats.
Or 3. Just
Really crazy. Oh, Jess. Yeah, but Jess stays outside. She doesn't like us anymore. She only likes us when we come outside.
yeah.
She likes the girls downstairs. Yeah.
So in this
But,
house,
you
we got
know-
3 cats, but it's this idea that if, especially as a woman, but although he did include Pete Buttigieg, who is gay and he's in a gay relationship, and they are trying to adopt children.
Love that statement.
Yeah, so they're trying to adopt. Anyway, that's a side thing. But if you don't have biological children, then you obviously are miserable. You obviously hate the life you have, and you just want to spread that hatred of life onto everyone. Make sure nobody's having a good time. And that's just like the idea behind it. Because he even talks about what he means by it. Like by saying, they have no children, they have miserable lives, they hate the choices they've made. Like he's saying this is the definition of a person who, yeah.
What about it's such a generalization. And not only is it a generalization, but it's a totally stupid comment. If I was his wife, I'd slap him. It's ridiculous to say such a thing because what about the families who can't have kids? Whether it's the woman who can't have a kid or her husband who can't have kids. What about them? What about those who have incurable diseases genetically and they don't want to pass those on to their children? So they choose instead to adopt. We know a lovely couple who have done that. What about them?
And what about
What
those who
about
choose not to have kids because they don't believe that like they're there to be a parent?
so now all these single girls who cannot find anybody to get married to because the ratio between men and women is outrageously skewed. So now they're all going to go racing to the IVF clinic so that they can have babies, just so that they can be on JD Vance's good books and not be considered his cat lady.
Or if you want,
Now
what if
they
you're a
know-
woman? What if you're a woman or man who wants to get involved in politics, but you have no children for whatever reason? There's many reasons. Like, how does that make them? So it's men and women. He includes both men and women when his list of people. But it's like this idea that, yeah, you don't have anything worth sharing, worth saying, worth contributing because you don't have that specific, profound, like perspective shift.
This is something that we've been talking about in quite a few of our podcasts because it seems to be such an issue out there where people just cannot seem to accept that children are a huge responsibility that some people, number one, may not be ready for. Number two, maybe can't take on anyways for whatever medical or personal reason. Why do I have to say it again? Why are we so concerned the number of people being born? There's so many people are having babies. There's nothing to worry about, people. We have a lot of them.
And we only recently did a podcast. It wasn't too long ago that we did when we talked about Ben Shapiro essentially saying that those who don't have children are not truly grown up. And we talked about that. But if you look at this as just another branch of the same argument, and it's a different person, although it is on the political conservative side.
Really need our heads out of the sand.
It really diminishes those who don't have children. It diminishes those who have chosen not to have children or cannot have children. It diminishes those who are single and believe that children should go into a two-parent home unless some tragedy occurs. Like, you don't know. What if your child has passed on before you, like, and died as a very young person? Do you only count as having children if you physically have children at that moment? Like, it just is a very destructive mindset that many in the political conservative, but also in the like conservative, like I said, like a traditional Judeo-Christian mindset kind of falls into, where it just seems to be like, if you don't have kids, there's something wrong with you, or there's the whole, don't worry. Like, how many times have I had people tell me, don't worry, like my friend was like 47 when she had a kid.
I don't know about you, but when you get to a certain age, having kids my mom had my two brothers in her 40s, and she may have had some of the energy she needed when they were young, but that diminished quickly as she started to age. There's a reason why you have them when they're young. So having kids in your 40s, yeah, you may be able to do it, but if you have a child at 40, by the time they're 20, you're 60. If you have it when you're 45, by the time they're 20, you're 65. And by the time they start having kids, you may not be on the earth anymore.
Like, my friend is my age. She was a surprise baby 14 years after the last child. And her father, so her and I are the exact same age, but her dad is 10 years older than my dad. So my dad's in 70s, he's in his 80s. One of the things she said is she wanted to get married to have kids when she was younger because she knows what it's like to have quite a bit older parents. And it's not like she doesn't love her parents and would change their parents, but she understands that there was a difference. But even like for someone like David doesn't have kids. I don't think he has plans to rush out and get one at whatever cost.
David, get
Nope.
married first.
I'll pass.
But do you deserve less of a say in anything simply because at this moment in your life, you have no children and you've chosen that because of one, belief system, and two, opportunity and things like that? Why what's what we're saying here on this podcast mean less because we don't have children? David and I don't have children. or Monique does.
And,
Does Monique's words have more impact or more meaning because she's a mom than David or me myself?
of course, because I'm special. I was thinking, if, say, this comment basically divides those who have from those who have not. So those who have, apparently, they know everything. They have and they can do all and they, for the country, and God bless America and all that good kind of stuff. And those who have not, they're just, you guys can do whatever you want.
You just have to
Fair.
come along because we're the parents.
Yeah. I think if you really go down to brass tacks, those who don't care about anything about the country, who don't have a stake in it, who don't care, who just live their life day by day, there's probably a lot of people who have and have not. It's not either or. Anybody, regardless of whether you have kids or not, are going to have that attitude if they want it. Just because you have kids doesn't mean that you're going to care about the education system out there if you're homeschooling, or if it just seems like my kids seem to be taught properly. So what do I care?
And some people really don't care about their kids whatsoever.
Some people just don't care about their kids whatsoever. And we see those kids in the schools, and we give them-
Ironically, the conservative Christian people are like, why do they even have children in the first place? Talk about mixed messaging.
So what are you guys pointing out here? Are you pointing out that JD Vance is emphasizing that people without kids should have no impact on the future nations or less impact on the future of nations?
He says they don't care.
Or that they don't have as, I don't know, I don't like using the word evolved, but it's like an evolved sense of priority, duty, whatnot, that you can only gain through childbirth or having your own child.
Yeah, people without kids don't care about the country. They don't have a
Or
stake.
it's not even they don't care. It's like they can't possibly understand. Do you know what I mean? I wouldn't say they're like, well, they all don't care. It's just they just don't have the capability of understanding all the, I don't know, the higher level of assumption reasoning.
nuances.
I don't, because you're not forward thinking, because you're just thinking about here and now, and that's all that matters.
Well,
You're
we're
concerned about your own income and your own career and your own schooling and your own little square of the world, and you don't care about the people
you're
next door.
We're really going to push to create change because you're just like, it doesn't really affect me.
The funny thing is with that is that whether you have kids or not, there's going to be people who's going to have that feeling anyways, because I don't know about you, but going out with placards in a protest is not my cup of tea, parent or not. And there's been so many things that have come up, and it's not that I don't care, but it's just you have that mentality that says, I'm one voice. What does it matter?
You said about people who don't care about children or education stuff, like it comes from all, like having children, not, there'll be people that fit in all different categories. And I think when it comes to making change and a desire to make change, it's going to come from different categories. And people have different priorities. They have different things they're passionate about. My passion, obviously, is singleness, but it's also the ethics of human fertility treatments. So I will talk to people passionately about singleness and the ethics of human fertility treatments, because I would like to see a change in how people generally think about these things. But does it mean that I don't care because I don't have children? No, but it doesn't mean that I have more, I would have maybe or more input or passion about education, the specific education that's in the schools in my area. If I had children, I might have more of a passion there, but everybody's passion's different.
So let's look at this a little differently.
Okay.
So what did JD Vance say in regards that he was going to do if he was successful in the nomination of things that would impact those without children influence in the future of the nation? Because I don't see where he specifically was promoting a law or reduction in some kind of status or right to those without children. To me, it seems like he was simply just pointing out something personal that was specifically targeted at a specific group of people for votes specifically. But he doesn't make any point in going about and saying, this is what I'm going to do, because these people don't have children or single. I think
No,
he's making a point where these people with children or with children, because they had children in general, because they had something that could influence them to have a stronger connection. He doesn't even make the point where he's going, people without children shouldn't have any impact on the nation. Doesn't say that at all. I'm a little lost in where he's actually going wrong. It seems to me that people are interpreting his opinion so that they can either bash him or create drama. Because he doesn't say, I'm going to introduce this law or this taxation, or I'm going to reduce the rights of these people, or I'm going to take away the right to do this just because you don't have children.
I think what he's doing is he's trying to discredit his opponents by saying that he's more qualified because he has children and they are less qualified.
Yeah, she's just that Harris, who is the vice president for Biden, is just a crazy cat lady who doesn't understand the United States and what it needs.
Yeah. And she's less qualified to be in her position not because of anything education, not because of her work experience in the past, which could possibly be more of an issue. It was because her and these other people that he pointed out specifically, they should therefore lose credibility, lose their qualification because they're childless.
I don't see him as discriminating between two different groups of people. I see him specifically targeting his opposition to make them look bad. He doesn't care who agrees with him or not, as long as his opposition looks bad enough so that people think that he's more qualified. So I don't think that's what his goal was at all.
But making that kind of a comment, he is lumping anybody who does not have kids, and specifically women, as being crazy cat ladies.
He
who
doesn't
have
care.
miserable lives.
Yeah.
As long as it affects his opposition.
Yeah. But that's the problem is that it's not only that people agreeing with him and that becomes a mindset. And so as single women specifically, because men, I'm not saying single men don't have issue like where people are saying stuff about them not having kids, there's other issues. But specifically single women are looked at, you don't have children, that you aren't qualified to do a lot of things, to have a right to say things in the church about not or having kids or having kids. Like you don't know because you don't have any. You don't have the right to have an opinion or that your opinion doesn't count to the same degree as a person who's been through having a child.
But again, I don't think he cares. Like, I don't think that's what he sat there and he's like, I'm going to do that. I think his goal was just, I'm going to say this because the only thing I can see coming out of that, what I'm about to say, is the degradation of my opponent so that I see more qualified for this specific position than.
But the problem is that it doesn't do that to him. If anything, it discredits him more because he is mudslinging. And it's not just because he's not saying anything about her qualifications. He is attacking her personally. And that is almost going around and
You're basically
So
saying that every
you-
single person.
Renee, you actually made my point, which is that he specifically attacked her. If everyone else wants to interpret that personal attack on his opposition as a personal attack on themselves, then that's absolutely fine. But they're the ones, he didn't create any of this. They did.
Oh,
He
yeah.
simply was only attacking his opponent.
But as a person
So
who has no children,
the discrimination wasn't coming from him because he never intended the discrimination. The discrimination was ultimately created by those who decided to interpret or take what he said as personal to themselves. So now that everyone has taken that personally, there's going to be a discrimination from one group to another, not because of what he intended for it to happen, but because of what everyone else, the audience, took from it.
and
Yeah,
as a
my
person who has no children and a woman, I actually did find it very offensive.
That's my point.
But the problem is
Right?
like they go out there and they say it in public and then they get people to agree with them.
What are we doing right now? We're voicing an opinion on something that wasn't directly intended for us.
But when you're in the public light like that, you have to watch what you say, because if he had said something like she has no ability to understand America because she's Black, then that would have
How
been
would
an
that
attack
be
against
different?
all the Black people would have been up in arms, because what's wrong with being Black? What does that have to do with anything? And that's the same thing I felt was nothing to do with the crazy cat lady trope, so to speak. It was the fact that I don't have kids. What about me not having kids makes me less qualified? I could say it's my education, it's my job experience, it's my passion. Like all these things can be, yes, I would agree with you. But what does being single and childless, how does that in any way disqualify
But
me from it?
that wasn't directed at you. That was directed at the opposition.
That
What
doesn't that
now?
doesn't
Because now we're taking what he directed at the opposition personally, right?
How
So now we should be mad at him for his lack of judgment and care for others who would be impacted by his statement. My concern for him is that he didn't have the judgment to actually either realize or care enough to understand the impact in his statement, how much that would affect people. Because people will take that personally.
Oh yeah.
And as this podcast proves, we are taking it somewhat personally because we decided to talk about it in a sense. It's affecting us somehow,
I would say,
even though it
like,
wasn't directed at us.
if he was somebody that I was supposed to vote for, I would not vote for him.
I would vote for him not for his discrimination between for people, but for his lack of judgment in order to be able to his lack of judgment in being able to respond and the indirect impact it would have on others.
But I think too, like I mentioned, like we saw this thing with Ben Shapiro, like having a similar statement. It's not just a one-off thing. It's actually like a
it's a
common,
mindset that they have.
it's a common mindset that's coming out of the traditional conservative Judeo-Christian people, and the people agree with it. That's the problem. It's not just they're like, oh, he said something he shouldn't have. People are literally saying, yes, amen, brother.
Yes, but that's not what happened with okay, from my understanding, he said what he said to the opposition. And in the case of Ben Shapiro, from what I understand, he was talking to the people directly. JD Vance was talking to his opposition directly, not the people. His
The
impact was the people. Ben Shapiro was talking to the people. Wasn't he not?
Vance did it in an interview,
Yeah.
which
Yes.
means that he said that out to the world. It wasn't just something he said to her face. It was something that he did in an interview that was telecasted across the country.
That was the purpose of the interview, was to gain supporters.
And I'm pretty sure he lost them instead. Because Jennifer Aniston said, I truly can't believe that this is coming from a potential VP of the United States. The actress has previously spoken openly about her struggles while trying to have children through in vitro. And last month, Mr. Vance voted to block Democrat proposed legislation to guarantee access to IVF nationwide. So in the clip, Mr. Vance criticized Vice President Kamala Harris because she has no biological children. Why would you criticize somebody because they have no biological children? What a stupid thing to criticize somebody, regardless of who she is and how good of a person she is or how bad of a person she is, whether she's a good candidate or a bad candidate. To attack her for not having biological children sets a precedent against others who have no biological children.
Yeah. It's just crazy because it's like when you get the people who agree, and it may not be like the whole crazy cat lady thing, but they agree with the sentiment. They agree with the idea that unless you have children, you don't really understand life. It's not until that moment that you hold them in your hands or you kiss them on their toes. I don't know, whatever it is that they like that then you just know. It's like you've become to another higher level of understanding in the universe. And like I said, I'm not against the fact that it does open you up in a different way than you were previously. But there's also very many things that will do that in like different places. When people go to war, that opens up your eyes in a very different way to people that never went to war. Going through abuse, opens up your eyes in a way that people who never been through it can never understand. But does that mean that they as people have less qualifications because they haven't had those specific things? Maybe in a very
Yes.
small area.
Not in the grand scheme of things.
You can't be my political candidate because you've never been through what I've been
War.
through, because you don't understand war or abuse or the
Heck,
loved one or a murder or whatever it is, like some traumatic thing.
you just have to go through drama school here to become a prime minister. And I don't think he really did much in the way of any reforms when it comes to his children, except for setting us back. So, and he's a father. So there you go for that. Did I say
Yeah,
that?
but you can't argue for what you believe in based on exception. He's probably an exception to the father rule. If you take the majority of fathers, they are probably good. Or not saying that he's a bad father.
No.
We're just trying to say,
Oh, no,
like,
I'm not-
the
I'm not
father,
saying-
the fatherhood means it doesn't qualify or disqualify him from
No.
being prime minister. There's
No.
plenty of other things we could take issue with.
There's not one.
Mother isn't one of them, or even a husband because he's gone through it as
So
well.
what really Vance could have used any kind of. I think what his point was is that because you don't have X, you don't qualify to be a leader. You don't have my experience, therefore you don't. Right? And I
And I
think him
think-
using that of being a mother or a father was just a bad judgment on his part. It gave him voters and then it dissipated.
Nowadays, when it comes to our political leaders, I don't even know what qualifications you need anymore. Because apparently, as long as you have the charisma to wow the voters, then there you go. They can vote you in.
And that's what I think that's all JD Vance cares about.
Yeah,
Right? So
because
he said what he said to try to attract a specific group of voters, and he did. Anyone with a traditional family, he attracted them, and then a couple years later, it backfired on him. But if he recants at this point, then it proves that's all he was doing. So he can't recant he can't take back his statement in that regard. Otherwise, he looks even worse. So he has to double down on it. At least that's how I'm seeing it.
or he should at least qualify it. But even still, I don't think he can.
And I think he did worse by what he said as his
Yeah.
rebuttal. I think it made it worse, to be honest.
Any decision he would have made was a losing battle. They would have just demonstrated that he was willing to say these kind of things just to get voters, and then once he lost voters, and he backtracked on what he said because he lost voters, it proves that he only said it to get voters, and that would probably put him in a bad light also. So either way, the initial judgment to actually say what he said destroyed him, even
Yeah.
if it looked like he was winning for a while.
Yep, there is a saying.
Like the
And I'm
people
going to
that
clean it-
responded. Yeah. I was going to say there's some responses to somebody who shared this. Some of the, obviously it's Facebook, you get people saying stuff, right? Like one person's reaction was to this article, so the Jennifer Aniston part of it was it's women who choose not to have kids, not women who can't have kids. There's a difference. And then give it a rest, Jennifer. Enjoy your cats because you treat everyone else like dirt. Or maybe if Jennifer Aniston could keep a man long enough to start a family, ...
Because Angelina Jolie didn't take too long to kick hers out. And it's the same guy.
You go, JD, you got my vote. Things like that. They just feed off of it.
Yeah. There was another leader who did that, who wowed the masses and got them to follow them like a bunch of rats to the Pied Piper. And that didn't end up very well. So, mind you, it was a long time ago. But I hear he was very charismatic and people believed what he said and was cheering and saying, yes, this is great. He was doing a wonderful thing. But he really wasn't, and nearly destroyed all of Europe. Just because a person speaks great and has great eloquence does not guarantee that they would be somebody who's good for your country. There's got to be more to them than the surface. If we don't investigate these people properly, then we're just going to end up in the same pot of stew that we've been in for years. And it's not just us, but the Americas as well.
And I'm just saying, I just want to talk about this topic a lot because I feel like I've come across this sentiment within the church or within the conservative not conservative politically, but again, traditional conservative mindset, lifestyle, whatever you want to say, like you come across this sentiment, whether it's intrinsic or explicit, like just the idea that if you don't have children, like you're less of a person. And I think that's about understanding, like that's the thing I want people to stop perpetuating. And it's just things like this that give Christians a bad name, in a sense, where you push this idea that you must have kids, highest calling, wife and mother. That's the way you need to go. And then it just like you live with that your whole life, and it can destroy your life. It can destroy your self-esteem. It can destroy the plan that God has for you, your ability to follow God's will and things, because you just think that's the only road that you have. And that until you have that title of wife and mother, then you don't really have a say, or you're not grown up enough, or you're not video game related. You haven't reached the level to enter the new realm. Like you need, and so I've come across this mentality. And that's why I wanted to have a conversation about it, because it's coming up again, because I know it is something he said in the past, but it's come up as a talking point now, it's a current event. And it's just important as single people or as Christians that we take a step back and we go, hey, does me not having a child or me not being married, does that change my ability to live a full and complete life that's following God's plan? No. And should we be like putting that on people, that expectation? And by saying to them, oh, you better get married and have kids because you don't want to be lonely when you grow up. Like you're putting these expectations on them, like with almost like dire consequences if you don't follow. You'll be a crazy cat lady. You'll be the spinster. You'll be the old maid. You could be the grumpy
Lonely
old
old
man.
cat.
Yeah, like the grumpy man, like the scary grumpy man from Home Alone.
Living in his house next door, and the kids runs.
"Oh, he's gonna catch you. He's gonna eat you up." Yeah,
Right.
or that if as a man, if you don't have children but you enjoy being around children, then all of a sudden you're like a pedophile or you're a pervert.
The labels that come out of the woodwork are ridiculous, regardless of whether you're male or female, because it's almost like you don't belong to society until you get married.
It's so
My
hard.
best friend was 92 years old when she got married for the first time. Great.
I'm happy
That's
for your
just-
best friend.
But it shouldn't be a requirement, and it shouldn't make the single person feel like they're half people because they're not connected to a spouse or a significant other. There should be freedom for everybody, regardless of your status. And like when I was living by myself as a single person, the isolation was huge. And I'm sure that the church didn't mean to, but they all were busy with their own lives and they don't give the single people.
Most of the time, the thought is if we just get them married, everything's fixed up.
Yeah.
And that's the like solution. Instead of maybe
Well-
reordering how we see these
Yeah.
people.
I found out that my mom worries about me. Why does mom worry about me? Well, probably because I'm not married and I'm not living alone. Am I really doing okay? And yeah, I have to work 2 jobs and 6 days a week because the economy sucks. But that's got nothing to be worried about, because as long as you've got a support system, why worry? And if you've got a God who created the heavens and the earth and created you and knows you inside and out and is your provider and your help and your comfort, what have you got to worry about? So, and that's what I told my brother is it's just a fact of life that, I have to do this right now. Who knows what tomorrow brings? Tomorrow's always a different day. I only worry about today, but as long as I've got a great big God who is with me all the time, I don't have anything to worry about. He is a father to the fatherless. And if we are the bride of Christ, I got a husband. I'm sorry. Please. I'm tempted. I have to wait until I get to heaven, and there's not going to be any living happily ever after because I got to share it with everybody. But that's all right. It's a different kind of bride and it's a
Happily
different kind
ever
of marriage,
Happily ever after.
but it's still a happily ever after. And I can just sing praises all the day long, and that just suits me just fine.
So one thing that
So
what people can get out of this is that whether or not you want to agree or disagree with the fact that this has been brought up for 2021 and it's become a drama thing, and we know that people are going to bring up stuff, whatever they can to throw at the other person. But I want people to look at themselves just in like, how do they view those that they know who have no children, who have no spouse, themselves, if they have no children or significant other, and just really look internally and be like, hey, do I think this way with myself? Do I see myself as a single, unmarried, no children person as a complete, fulfilled person who has qualifications to run after things passionately that God has called us to do?
In other words, don't let anyone else dictate for you how you should perceive the world, but through Christ and all alone, you'll be able to perceive the world for its true form.
exactly. Amen. What a way. What a perfect. That's perfect, David. Exactly. If
Maybe
you
we
see
should
the
end
world through the eyes of Christ, you will see it a totally different way.
maybe we should end on that note, because that sounds like a good note to end on.
That was a
Good
good note,
words,
David.
David. Good note.
Good word, David. And that was a really good debate you had there with us.
We love having you on. Sometimes Monique and I are too samey. Same thought.
Yeah, yeah. Too samey. We need that. We need that opposition sometimes. And
pushback.
sometimes I like.
Thank you all for joining us here on this podcast. Hopefully it made you think. That's the most thing that we want you to do. Make you think and see that God has created you as a being, that a person that is complete within him, and no other external labeling or person can complete that. It's just you and God. It doesn't mean other people be a part of your life and make great contributions. But yeah, so let's start thinking about ourselves in a better light and those around us as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll see you all here next time.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Route 77 podcast. We hope our discussion today has given you some food for thought about how we view singles and childless individuals in our society and the church. Remember, your worth and ability to contribute to God's plan is not determined by your marital or parental status. We encourage you to reflect on these topics and challenge any biases you might hold. As always, we'd love to hear your thoughts and stories. Connect with us on social media or visit our website at route77.ca. That's ROUTE 77.ca. Until next time, stay blessed and remember to live your single life to its fullest.